There's something living inside you right now that is slowly killing the life you were meant to have. You can't see it. You probably can't name it, but you feel it. In the way you hesitate before speaking your truth. In the way you scroll through old messages at 2 in the morning. In the way you still flinch when someone walks out a door the same way they did. It's not a wound. It's something worse than a wound. A wound heals. What you're carrying doesn't heal because you won't put it down. And here is what nobody tells you about that thing you're holding on to. It's not weakness that makes you grip it this tightly. It's intelligence. It's the most sophisticated survival mechanism the human brain ever developed, quietly convincing you that holding on is the same thing as staying safe, that the pain you know is better than the freedom you don't. And it has been running that program in the background of your life, every relationship, every decision, every moment you almost chose yourself for longer than you probably realize. But what if you could unlearn that? What if the single act of learning how to let go, truly, completely, biologically let go, could change not just how you feel, but who you fundamentally are? Not who you're trying to become, who you actually are, at the level beneath habit, beneath memory, beneath the story you've been telling yourself since the first time someone taught you that love meant holding on. That's not a metaphor, that's a neurological fact. And by the time you reach the end of this, you will understand exactly why letting go is the hardest thing a human being can do. And you will understand, for the first time, how it is actually done.
Let's start in 1945, in a jungle in the Philippines, with a man named Hiroo Onoda. Hiroo Onoda was a Japanese soldier, not a fanatic, not a madman, but a trained, disciplined, deeply loyal military officer who was stationed on the island of Lubang in 1944 with a simple and direct order from his commanding officer: hold your position, do not surrender, fight until relieved. And so he did. He fought for nearly 30 years. While the Second World War ended in 1945, while Japan rebuilt itself, while the world moved forward through the Cold War and the moon landing and a generation of peace, Hiroo Onoda remained in that jungle, conducting guerrilla operations, surviving on bananas and coconuts, believing with absolute certainty that the war was still being fought. He was shown leaflets dropped from aircraft announcing the war's end. He believed they were enemy propaganda. He was shown newspapers. He thought they were forged. People from his village tried to reach him. He assumed it was a trap. He wasn't stupid. He wasn't broken. He was loyal to a reality that had ceased to exist. It wasn't until 1974, nearly 3 decades after the war ended, that his former commanding officer, now a retired bookseller in Tokyo, flew to the Philippines and personally walked into that jungle and gave Hiroo Onoda the only order he would accept: stand down. The war is over. Go home. And here is what haunts that story, what makes it more than just a strange footnote in military history. When Hiroo Onoda emerged from that jungle, blinking in the light of a world he didn't recognize, he said something that should stop every one of us cold. He said that he felt no regret for what he had done because he had followed his orders, because loyalty to the mission, to the identity, to the story of who he was, had been the only thing that felt real. That's what holding on looks like from the inside. Not tragic, not obviously wrong. It looks like integrity. It looks like commitment. It looks like being the kind of person who doesn't give up. And that is exactly why it is so devastatingly difficult to let go of the things that are keeping you in a jungle that no longer exists.
Now here is the framework, not a list of tips, not a morning routine,
a map of the actual psychological architecture of attachment, the structure underneath your behavior, because you cannot dismantle something you don't understand. The human brain is not built for the present moment. It is built for survival, and survival is rooted in the past. The brain's primary function is pattern recognition. It learns what hurt you, what saved you, what made you feel loved, what made you feel abandoned, and it builds neural superhighways around those experiences so that you can recognize danger faster next time. This is remarkable. This is also the source of nearly every form of psychological suffering you will ever experience in your adult life. When you go through a loss, a relationship, a dream, a version of yourself you had to leave behind, your brain doesn't file it away as history. It files it as an unresolved threat. And unresolved threats don't disappear, they activate. Every time something in your environment resembles the original experience, the same tone of voice, the same feeling of uncertainty, the same vulnerability, your nervous system fires the same distress signal it fired the first time, not as a memory, as a present tense emergency. This means that the person who broke your heart 4 years ago is, neurologically speaking, still breaking your heart right now. The dream you abandoned at 22 is still abandoning you today. The version of yourself that failed in public, that was humiliated, that was left, that version is still living inside your amygdala, still convinced the danger is current, still gripping the thing you lost, as though letting go of it means letting go of your right to have ever wanted it. This is the first layer of why letting go is hard. Your brain doesn't know the difference between a memory and a threat. But there is a second layer, and this one is deeper and stranger and more important: identity. Psychologists who study grief and loss have found something counterintuitive at the center of attachment. We don't only hold on to what we loved, we hold on to what we suffered for. The greater the sacrifice, the greater the cognitive dissonance when we consider releasing the thing we sacrificed for, because releasing it means that the sacrifice was wasted. And the human ego will perform extraordinary mental gymnastics to avoid that conclusion. It will reframe, it will rationalize, it will convince you that staying is noble, that waiting is wisdom, that the pain you're still carrying is proof of how deeply you loved, how seriously you took the commitment, how much you matter. This is not a character flaw. This is the sunk cost fallacy operating at the level of selfhood, and it is nearly impossible to see from the inside because it presents itself as virtue. The third layer is the one that breaks people open when they finally see it. Letting go requires grief, and grief requires admitting that something is actually gone. This sounds obvious. It is not. Most people who cannot let go have never actually grieved the thing they're holding on to. They have ached for it, they have bargained with it, they have raged at it and scrolled through its ghost on their phone screen and written letters they never sent and rehearsed conversations they will never have. But they have not grieved it, because grieving it means accepting its permanent, irreversible absence. And the moment you accept that, truly accept it, you fall into a free fall that has no visible floor, and every instinct you have will pull you back from that edge. So here is what actually happens to people who cannot let go. They escalate. The mind, unable to release the unresolved loop, turns up the volume. What began as grief becomes obsession. What began as caution becomes paralysis. What began as loyalty to a past self becomes a prison with walls you can no longer see because you've been inside them so long you've started calling them home. The relationship you couldn't let go of becomes the template through which you destroy every new relationship that dares to get close. The failure you couldn't release becomes the story you use to disqualify yourself from every future risk. The version of yourself that was hurt becomes the gatekeeper for the version of yourself that could be healed. And that gatekeeper is not kind, and it is not rational, and it has veto power over your entire life. This is the escalation. This is what untreated attachment does over time. It doesn't stay the same size. It grows into the available space of your life and fills it. And yet, and this is where everything shifts, the very intensity of that grip is data. It is pointing at something. Not the person you lost, not the dream you abandoned, not the failure you can't stop replaying. It is pointing at a belief buried underneath all of it that you absorbed somewhere early in your life before you had the language to question it. A belief that says, I am only safe when I am certain, or I am only lovable when I am needed, or if I stop holding on, I will disappear. Find the belief. That is where the work is, not the person, not the memory. The belief that the person or the memory was protecting you from having to face.
Because here is the identity shift. Not a habit, not a practice, but a shift at the level of who you believe yourself to be. For most of your life, you have been a person who holds on. You have called it love. You have called it commitment. You have called it resilience. And some of it was those things. But underneath it, in the place you don't usually let people see, you have been holding on because releasing felt like dying. Because somewhere in your architecture, the act of letting go became fused with the act of ceasing to exist, as though the thing you're carrying is the thing that proves you were here, that you felt something, that you were real. You are not the thing you're carrying. You are the one who carried it. Read that again. You are not the grief. You are not the grudge. You are not the failed dream or the broken relationship or the version of yourself that couldn't make it work. You are the consciousness that has been hauling all of that through every room of your life, and you have mistaken the weight for the self. The people who have actually let go, not suppressed, not distracted, not moved on as a performance, describe the same thing. A moment of recognition, not a decision, not a discipline, a recognition that they had been gripping something that had already dissolved, and that their hands were empty, and that empty hands are not a loss, they are a beginning. Hiroo Onoda walked out of that jungle in 1974, and the world he had been fighting for was gone. The Japan he loved had changed beyond recognition. The war he had given 30 years to had been over before his loyalty had the chance to matter. And he had a choice: to spend the rest of his life in bitterness at the time stolen from him, at the orders that kept him in place, at the reality that had moved without his permission, or to walk forward into the life that remained. He chose to walk forward. He moved to Brazil. He built a ranch. He raised cattle. He mentored young people. He wrote a book. He lived to 91 years old, and in interviews near the end of his life, he spoke not about what he had lost, but about what he had learned. That devotion without discernment is not strength. That loyalty to a reality that no longer exists is not honor. That the bravest order you will ever receive is the one that tells you, the fight is over. You can come home now. You are the commanding officer of your own life, and you are the soldier still in the jungle. And you need to deliver that order to yourself, because no one else can walk into that jungle and give it to you. So here is what this costs. Nothing you need to buy, nothing you need to sign. But everything you need to do will feel, at first, like betrayal. It will feel like disloyalty to the people you loved. It will feel like indifference to the suffering you experienced. It will feel like you are erasing the past by refusing to keep it alive in your nervous system. You are not. You are honoring the past by refusing to let it colonize your present. You are honoring what you lost by deciding that what you still have, your attention, your energy, your capacity for joy, your ability to love without reaching backward, is worth protecting. The grief will come. Let it. Don't manage it or schedule it or perform it. Let it move through you the way weather moves, not something you created, not something you can stop, but something that passes when you stop building walls to hold it in place. Cry for what was real. Cry for what you wanted that you didn't get. Cry for the version of yourself who deserved better and didn't always receive it. And when the crying is done, don't rush to fill the silence. Sit in it. The silence is not emptiness. The silence is the sound of space, the space where something new and yours and finally present is about to take root. You have been waiting for permission. This is it. Not from me. I am just a voice arriving at the right moment, the same way every right voice arrives at the right moment. The permission is from you, the version of you that already knows what has to be released, the version that has known for longer than you're comfortable admitting, the version that has watched you hold on and has waited with extraordinary patience for you to be ready to trust what comes after. If you've made it to this moment in the video, you are not a casual observer of ideas. You are someone who thinks at a different depth than most people are willing to go. That is not flattery, that is a pattern. The Mind Supremacy Codex exists because there is a certain kind of mind that cannot be satisfied by surface explanations, that feels the machinery underneath experience and needs to understand it completely before they can move. You are that kind of mind. And that means this next part matters more for you than it would for almost anyone else. In the comments below, I want you to do something that will feel more difficult than you expect. I want you to write, not for me, not for the algorithm, but for yourself, the one thing you already know you are still carrying. Not the story around it, not the justification, just the thing. One sentence. Because the act of naming it in a public space among people who think the way you think is not performance. It is the first irreversible step toward releasing it. There is a reason confession has existed in every philosophical and spiritual tradition across human history. Not because an audience absolves you, but because language made exterior what was only interior. And what exists only inside you can loop forever. Put it outside yourself. Watch what happens. And if this reached something in you that you have not been able to articulate before, if it gave you the framework, the language, the mirror you needed, then share it, not as content, as an act of philosophical generosity toward the person in your life who is still in the jungle and doesn't yet know the war is over. You don't need to explain it to them. You don't need to say anything at all. Just send it and let the ideas do what ideas have always done when they find the right mind at the right moment. Subscribe to Mind Supremacy Codex if you are committed to this level of understanding. Not motivation, not inspiration, but the actual architecture of the mind, examined without flinching. Every video here is built for the same purpose, to give you the tools to think more clearly, live more deliberately, and become the version of yourself that doesn't need the jungle anymore. You are not what you survived. You are not what you lost. You are not the grip. You are the hand. And open hands, it turns out, can hold so much more than closed ones ever could. Let go. Not because it's easy, because you have been strong long enough. And strength, real strength, is knowing when the fight is finished and choosing, finally, freely, to walk back into your life.